Mother's Day and mixed emotions, understanding and healing for Black daughters. This is a requested topic. So I want to say a few things before we get started because we know that within our community, it is a big no-no to talk about issues about Black mothers. So we're having this conversation because some don't have a positive relationship with their mother. And so we want to be able to have an open dialogue about experiences that maybe are not positive that some Black women may have, because when we don't have an opportunity to talk about it, people feel like they have to just experience these things in silence. They feel alone, and it's not helpful. So it's important, if you have these experiences, for us to be able to talk about it. We cannot heal things if we don't talk about it. So again, this conversation is not talking about all Black mother daughter relationships. This, we know it's on a continuum. So sometimes on the other side of the continuum are relationships that are not healthy or positive. So we are here to talk about those types of relationships and how that may impact you in terms of mixed emotions, particularly with Mother's Day coming up. So if you don't know me already, I'm Dr. Kamani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, a toxic job survivor, and more importantly, I'm a toxic job liberator for Black women. I'm co-hosting the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women with Marissa Price, May 18th and 19th. So get your ticket. The information is right there on the screen as well in the description section. So I'm excited to have Dani here with us again today. So Dani, if you could introduce yourself, and then we're going to get right into the conversation.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me again, Dr. Kamani. I appreciate it. I'm Dani Ellison, and I'm a reparenting coach for Black women. I help them reparent after going no contact with narcissistic mothers. And as of late, I am also an acupuncture detoxification specialist, and I help my clients overcome symptoms of PTSD and addiction.
Okay, awesome. Dani, I wonder if you could scoot over just a little bit because the wording is like, or lift your chair up a little bit, maybe. Okay, that's better. That's better. That's better. Much, much, much better. Thank you so much. Okay, I didn't notice it earlier. Okay, so can you share with the audience, if they're not familiar with your story already, how was it that you ended up going no contact with your mom? Like, what was the journey that it ended up with that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the same way that it is for many Black women who go no contact. I felt like I didn't have a choice. I
Mm,
was in my late 20s, and
mhm,
the abusive dynamics had been present in my relationship with my mother since I could remember.
mm,
And at the time that I went no contact, it was clear that communication was breaking down and it wasn't
mhm,
going to get better. There was no way to let myself out of that cycle of abuse
mm,
other than stopping communication altogether.
mm.
And so
Wow.
it was the situation that was what I call the final straw. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, I think, for the
Mhm,
sort of disagreements that we would have or the sort of
mhm,
episodes that would come up. But it was just, I had gotten old enough that I could see through the manipulation. I could
mm,
see that the relationship was more draining than it was beneficial. And
mm,
I had a lot that I was working toward, in my to establish myself in my 20s. In my young life, I was working toward career goals, and I just
mhm,
couldn't afford to make space in my life for someone who would tear me down because I was
mhm,
working to build myself up. And so
mm,
I had no contact, really feeling like I had no choice. It
mhm,
was the only way that I could be safe, honestly.
mm. Okay. Can you elaborate on that part? Because I think some women may resonate with what you said in terms of feeling like you didn't have a choice. So, what did you feel would was costing you by remaining in that relationship, and to the point where you felt like you had no choice?
Yeah, when you're a victim of abuse, it steals your dignity
Mm,
because you are constantly living a double life. When you show up in the world, you don't wear a face that says, "Hi, I'm being abused at home behind closed doors."
mhm, mhm,
And um, that awareness that I was being mistreated, as well as the demand on myself to portray this image that
mhm,
I was happy, safe, that I had a great relationship with my mother. We're so
mhm,
close. She does so much for me, but I
mhm,
couldn't acknowledge. I was just trained to block out the way that she would speak to me, the way that she would manipulate me.
Mm.
Sometimes when situations came to a head, she would just blatantly lie or gaslight or just dismiss something that had previously happened. And there
Mhm.
was no solid ground in our relationship. I never
Mhm.
knew who she was going to be or what I was going to get.
Mhm.
All the while, I'm made to feel like this dutiful soldier who has to do everything correctly to serve her and not step out of line.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I'm a horrible daughter and
Mhm.
I deserve to be punished.
Wow. Right, right, right. And I see in the chat a comment, when your mother is your bully, you don't have a choice,
Mm,
right? That's exactly what you were saying.
right.
So, how has that decision of no contact impacted your life, particularly as we're coming up to Mother's Day? So, how has that impacted you?
My It's been a world of change, honestly. Going no contact with my mother was the catalyst that I really needed to discover who I am as an individual.
Hmm.
When you have a narcissistic parent, becoming an individual is a threat. And so there was always this covert undermining of my development emotionally in that relationship. And
Mhm.
so since cutting those ties, I have a much, it's like my relationship with myself, my inner child is transformed. I feel like I know who I am as a person. I know my own voice. I know how to use it. I'm in touch with my primal instincts to protect myself
Mhm.
and empowered to do so when I feel necessary. And I just did not have that connection to a source before. It was as though
Mhm.
that had been kept from me, hijacked, and
Mm.
sabotaged.
Mm.
And I think that's particular for Black women because we're taught early on not to have an emotional response to the way that our mother treats us.
Mm.
We're not really given space to critique her, and when she has done something wrong, we can't cry about it, we can't flinch, we can't make a face, or we're asked to absorb that abuse without responding.
Hmm. So, Danny, how did you get to the point of being able to go through this healing? Like, what helped facilitate that? So you had the no contact. So that in what way that you were kind of removed away from that ongoing abuse. What other things supported you in terms of how you came to be who you are now?
Sure. For one, I did go to therapy.
Hmm.
When I cut no contact, like I said, I had a lot on my plate. I couldn't like afford to fall apart properly. So I
Mm.
knew that I needed a therapist because I needed to make space, like schedule time to not be okay
Mm.
and get some help walking through that. So that was a tremendous support.
Mhm.
But honestly, it was the power of the Holy Spirit. I
Mm.
honestly believe because shortly before I went no contact with my mother, I had
Mhm.
a spiritual experience and awakening through the baptism of the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until recently that I really connected the two.
Mm.
It wasn't long after the baptism of the Holy Spirit that all of my connections just started to twist and turn. They didn't fit anymore.
Mm.
Um, And I believe that the Holy Spirit was the guiding light that kept me going because there are so many dark twists and turns through the process of going no contact, of
Mhm.
grieving, of overcoming self hatred, and
Mhm.
embracing this wounded inner child that we have. There are so many opportunities to get lost or to turn back because going back to what we know is easier.
Mhm. Mhm.
For that reason, I am an advocate for Black women who have this transition to make because I don't want them to do it alone. There's no reason to.
Mhm.
There's a
Mhm.
path. There are others now who have gone through the same process. We have
Mhm.
much better understanding of what it's going to look like ahead of time. There's no reason to do it by yourself or just to go in blind.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you emphasize the grieving. So, can you speak a little bit more about the grieving? And I also heard you say about the self-hatred, possibly, right? Can you speak more about those things?
Sure. So when you go no contact with your mother, just like with any ending of a relationship, there's mixed feelings.
Mm.
There's a part of you that knows that you went no contact for a reason and that you're
Mhm.
committed to your boundary. But there's the other part of you that's used to having your mother in your life every day, all the time, since the beginning. You know, she's the oldest sort of influence that you have in your life. And so missing her is a huge part of that initial transitioning process. Feeling guilty for not talking to her, for keeping her number blocked, for not calling to check on her, for not answering her calls. That guilt and shame around not being able to have a loving, healthy relationship with your mother are the first sort of smoke and mirrors that you have to overcome in that journey of contact. And I would say the self-hatred, the hatred of the inner child is next. It's like stage 2, because once you understand, once you get past those withdrawals, you show yourself that you're serious about no contact. You go longer than you've ever gone without speaking to her. And maybe for you, that's 6 weeks or 6 months or 1 year. Once you sort of enter that second phase, you're faced with the challenge of healing your inner child. And at that point, she's been neglected. She's been neglected since the initial trauma that you experienced that caused her to shut down. And so you now have years of experiences to process. You have self-esteem that is on the ground. You have to forgive yourself for all the compromises you've made, for all the times that you people pleased instead of standing up for yourself. You have to come to terms with all that she has endured and the fact that she is you. And that's where the PTSD kicks in. First, go no contact from an abuser. At first, you feel this disorientation. And there's a part of you that can't believe that it's real. Like, wait a minute, am I really a victim of abuse? Was there really a narcissist? Was that really that bad?
Why do you think it's so hard to come to that realization?
Because it causes an identity crisis. It shatters your world. And when you're in that relationship, you have to block it out to survive. You're dependent on your parent. That's what makes that particular trauma bond unique. It's a partner that you can walk away from. This is your parent, and you're dependent on them. The same person who's supposed to encourage your social skills and teach you to value and protect yourself is the same one who is sabotaging your ability to do so because it makes you easier to control.
Wow.
So initially, that inner child is broken. She's the one that you have betrayed over and over and over again. She's the one, and we hate her because she was abused. You know, she was the small child, the actual physical being that was mistreated, that wasn't good enough. That's the way that we experience that.
And I'm so glad you really highlighted issues of power and control, because that's the core elements of abuse.
Absolutely.
Power and control. Yeah. So Dani, what are some ways that Black women who've gone through similar experiences as you have in terms of the abuse and no contact, what are some of the common challenges and even like triggers that may come up around holidays, such as Mother's Day? Can you talk about what that might look like and how you have dealt with that as well, and how you support other Black women in working through those things?
Yeah, definitely. So I think holidays have this special emotional effect on us. It's a sort of anniversary effect where we may be just fine leading up to it, but on the day of, we're hit with all these feelings that seem to come out of nowhere. So just expecting to have some emotions that maybe seem to surface out of nowhere is a help, a way to go in with a good mindset. I think getting early on, at least if you're still in contact with mutual family members and you're no contact with your mom, getting phone calls from them, or maybe if you're calling like an aunt or a grandma or somebody to say Happy Mother's Day, sort of maintaining those boundaries of contact with these people and no contact with her might cause some added stress. So I would say be mindful. Think about the communication that's actually healthiest for you and plan ahead as best you can.
Mm-hmm.
And then also being around other people, whether that's friends or family who do have their mothers, who are like exchanging gifts and celebrating and going out. That that's likely to be a trigger to cause you to feel sad and left out and excluded. And I think if this is what feels comfortable for you, staying home, being
Mm-hmm.
alone is best.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, there might be a safe person or two, somebody who really gets it, where you can just be yourself. If being with those people on that day is helpful, that's a good idea. But more than anything, plan ahead and
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and embrace what feels comfortable.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm glad you said to like be aware of boundaries, right? But also you said be mindful of if you leave the house, you go out, you might get triggered because you might see people in relationship. And so maybe it might be best to stay at home. And what about if you do decide to stay at home, what kind of things do you think would be helpful in terms of healing? Or what kind of things do you do when you stay at home for holidays or particularly Mother's Day?
Yes, definitely. Mother's Day is an excellent time to nurture the inner child and celebrate yourself as mother as you go through the reparenting process.
Mm-hmm.
So something I do, I'm not particularly triggered by Mother's Day at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This is year 6, so it's just another day for me now. But buying myself a little gift or like the same, get myself a card and a little token that I might have gotten from my mother
Mm-hmm.
and express gratitude for my inner child and our bond and celebrate our growth. Still taking time to sort of look back and commemorate on that day is important. It's a way that I can still celebrate it and not have to feel that sense of exclusion.
Mm-hmm.
But something else early on that helped me was to make time to cherish my positive memories with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So doing some journaling, reminiscing, laughing, crying, making space to just grieve and miss her, watch her favorite movies, just spend some time thinking about her, looking at pictures. She's still my mother. I still love her.
Mm-hmm.
And I can still engage with her on Mother's Day, just not through actual contact.
Right, right, right. So you still maintain the positive memories,
Mhm.
right? So it's not like all bad, all negative things. You still able to retain that. So Dani, you mentioned the benefits of National Acupuncture Detoxification Association for PTSD. I've not heard of that. So can you share with the audience what is that? What are the benefits? And just tell us more about it.
Absolutely. So, the NADA protocol, which is endorsed by the National Acupuncture Detoxification Association, is a 5-point acupuncture protocol that is rooted in ancient Chinese medicine, just like full body acupuncture. But it was adopted and developed by the Black Panthers and the Young Lords in the 1970s to treat for addiction
Hmm.
and eventually PTSD.
Hmm.
So they used it to treat addicts throughout the heroin epidemic. And it became so successful and overwhelmingly embraced by the community that they became targets by the government. Some of them were killed, jailed, their clinic was closed. Um, they suffered narcissism at the hands of the government because they started a revolution. Really, obviously, there was more going on than just acupuncture,
Mm-hmm.
but the treatment itself was used early on by the Black Panthers to treat something that the medical industry was not willing to acknowledge.
Hmm. I never heard of that before. Okay.
Yes. So I would recommend, I think I felt that way. I was like, wait a minute, what? The Black Panthers?
Never heard of that. Right. What?
Yes. So I put together a free resource. It's the Nada Detox Toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
If you download that, it has all the information. It can get you out to the links to everything that you need. There's a wonderful movie that I recommend you watch called Dope is Death. It's a documentary, and it is about that period in the 70s and the role that Nada acupuncture played in the revolution. It's definitely, you'll learn something new. I certainly did.
Hmm. Dope is dead. Is that what you said?
Dope is death.
Death.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, can you share how nada can be used for people who've experienced trauma, particularly Black women who've had some type of trauma?
Yes. So the NADA treatment or the NADA protocol is a naturally detoxifying treatment. So when you use either needles or what I use with my clients virtually, something called ear seeds, they are an alternative to needles. You will naturally trigger the body's um, response to those points being triggered, and it will detox your liver, it will detox your kidney, it calms your central nervous system, and it actually, I have a list right here for you. So these are the symptoms of PTSD
Uh-huh.
that we probably don't recognize, but these are the symptoms:
Mhm.
agitation, anxiety, lack of focus, crying spells, difficulty remembering, mood swings, obsessive thoughts, substance abuse, paranoia, shakiness, trouble sleeping, recurring nightmares, frequent headaches, difficulty trusting others, and suicidal thoughts.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think it's important to have this conversation as Black women because there are so many different fronts on which we are faced with trauma, with traumatic
Mhm.
experiences,
Mhm. Mhm.
layers of it. And so what I really appreciate about the NADA protocol is that it will naturally cause the body to release toxins and trauma. So
Mm.
you have a physical detox as well as an emotional one.
Mhm.
So physically, you will experience, better sleep, a greater sense of well-being, more emotional control, fewer headaches. It helps with chronic pain. Um,
Mm.
but then emotionally, you have this surfacing of fear, of sadness, of grief. And typically, as you continue treatment, your repressed memory surfaces. And so, this is what I've talked about a lot with my personal experience healing from the PTSD after going no contact. Is that I had
Mhm.
repressed memory come to the surface, and it it completely changed my healing journey. It was like a day and night effect. Once
Mm.
I came into that awareness,
Mhm.
I said, "Oh, okay, I'm good. I'm done
Oh,
here."
the repressed memory.
Yes, of the repressed memory, all the turmoil, all of the inner seeking of like, what's wrong with me? Why am I experiencing this depression? What was
Mm.
the significance of this experience? Why am I always feeling this way? It all resolved. It all made sense.
Okay. So that question, you have an answer to the questionings you might have, right?
Yes,
Okay.
the
Okay.
pieces of my memory that I had repressed because I wasn't ready to process them
Mhm.
surfaced, and they were the final pieces of the puzzle that I needed.
Okay. So, Dani, you mentioned ear seeds. I know you had mentioned that before in a previous video. Can you share with people about what are ear seeds and how are they utilized?
Yeah, so ear seeds are tiny stickers with a literal seed on them. I think it's the Vicaria flower. It's an actual seed. So when you peel this sticker, mine are right here. When you peel the sticker off, you
Hmm.
have that little black seed,
Mhm.
and you place the seed into the pressure point so that you can massage the back of the ear seed and use that seed to stimulate that point to get the blood flowing. And you generate the same response as if you punctured it with a needle.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the great thing about ear seeds is you can wear these for up to 7 days.
Oh,
Yeah.
you just wear it.
Yes, you just wear it. So that's the difference. In-person treatment, the needles are placed and you sit with them for maybe 30 to 45 minutes. Ear seeds, you place them and you leave them. And just throughout the day, 2 or 3 times a day, massage them, get the blood flowing, remind the body that they're there, and
Hmm.
you experience a more mild, but longer term, like a slower release of those benefits. And I think
Hmm.
it's a great middle ground for those who are not ready to like be fully confronted in a it was violent for me. It was like the first session I had a huge
The
release.
first session.
After the first session, like that night, I was on the floor.
Wow.
Yes. And I had already done quite a bit of work at that point.
Mhm.
I think ear seeds are great, won't be as intense.
Mhm.
But I will say I've already started using them with my clients, And after one session, so far, they're reporting better sleep, and emotional release that they are aware of,
Mm-hmm.
um, reduced cravings, and better emotional control.
Hmm. So it's not a suggested in conjunction with therapy. Is it also recommended that you are under medical attention? Just what are some of the things that is recommended with NADA?
Yes, great question. So, acupuncture of any kind, but NADA specifically, is not a standalone treatment. So if you are using NADA to treat addiction or PTSD, it is recommended that you're also being supported in some manner. Ideally, that's one-on-one support. Maybe that is a medical professional of some kind,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a mental health professional of some kind. It could
Mm-hmm.
be a mentor, someone in your church. It doesn't have to be whatever fits for you, but you do want to get some support because as you have withdrawals, and
Mm-hmm.
as those toxins and that trauma surfaces, you will need emotional support.
That's good to know. That's good to know. So as a peer, I'm sorry, you're gonna say something, Danny?
No, go for it.
Okay. So as a peer support for Black women dealing with maternal trauma and PTSD, what are some unique aspects or common themes you've observed in this community?
So I've noticed that Black women are most likely to overlook symptoms of PTSD because they're beating themselves up.
Mm,
We tend to blame ourselves. We tend to feel shame when
mhm,
we're somehow missing the mark, when we're not performing at our best across the board. And
mhm,
we're more likely to put pressure on ourselves to be normal, to just function through it and be strong, than to
mhm.
say like, oh, hey, this looks like I might need some emotional support. It might be time to reach out or explore some resources. And so we're probably functioning with PTSD
Mm,
and don't even know it.
mm,
And I think that's, I mean, for Black people, there's no way you're not storing some trauma, especially if you haven't touched it, you haven't done any work at all.
mhm,
There's some trauma in there.
mhm,
And so you can experience benefits using NADA without getting the one-on-one support, but it is going to create some pressure because
mhm.
your mental and emotional state will change.
Yeah, yeah. So how would you go about providing some type of support or guidance for people who've had this experience?
Yes, so I'm so excited. I just opened my calendar for a support group for Black women with traumatic stress. And within the support group, I will help them place ear seeds so that they can experience the benefits of NADA at home.
Mhm,
And not as a nonverbal treatment. So if women would just like to come and get their ear seeds placed and leave without sharing any personal details, that is totally fine. But I'll also make space for those who would like to share or ask questions. It is a safe space for Black women who are experiencing any part of this journey. And so
mhm.
just creating a space for them to be together and interact.
So it's in person?
It's a virtual
Oh,
session.
it's virtual. Okay. So you walk them through where to put the ear seeds.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. So can you talk a little bit in terms of why is it important for this to be a group for Black women, right? And why is it important to have a culturally grounded approach in the healing?
Definitely. So I've said before, but our best self does not exist in the presence of our abuser.
Mm,
With that said, Black women need their own spaces, period.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's that.
That's enough said right there, right? Right.
Yes. Yes.
So, okay. And so what about cultural identity and that sense of community? How
Yeah.
does that also factor into the healing?
Yeah, I think it gives Black women a chance to center themselves within their experience versus other women who look like them.
Mhm.
Because between culture and religion, like whether we're Black American or some other, Black abroad, we're Caribbean, we're UK Black, whatever we bring to the table culturally
Mhm.
can affect how we perceive our own experience,
Mm.
can affect our ability to recognize and name abuse.
Mm.
And so being able to share with other Black women who have similar and different experience from you helps you create sort of a spectrum
Mm.
and figure out where you belong and how you can best identify.
Mm-hmm. So how do you work through, because I started off saying this when we started about, within our community, and I think this is the blanket statement, right? So we know there's a lot of diversity within the Black community, we know it's a lot of diversity, right?
Yes.
But I think a common theme is that the Black mother is revered. You're quiet, you stay quiet, you defer, all those other things. So to say anything against the Black mother or to have no contact with the Black mother is really not seen as something that we do in the Black community, right?
Yeah.
So how do you address that issue in your group as well? Because I'm thinking about the issue of the abuse that some Black women may experience. Coupled with that is this is a no-no. Like, we don't do this kind of stuff. How do you address that?
Well, I think exposure therapy is probably second to NADA in most helpful tools that I use with my clients,
Mm-hmm.
because exposure journaling, which is what I have clients do, which is being very explicit about their traumatic experiences, it forces us to confront what has actually happened to us
Mm-hmm.
and to increase that awareness that will help us move past the initial like shock and denial of the PTSD. And once we come to terms with what we have experienced, we're just one step away from acknowledging that it was not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Once we can do that, everything else will shift around that understanding. It's how we like create those safe boundaries for our inner child
Mm-hmm.
and draw new lines. And while there's grief associated with no contact with our mothers,
Mm-hmm.
generationally, it represents a shifting. It
Mm-hmm.
represents that as Black women, we're no longer willing to be victimized, even if it's by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so going no contact, or this generational healing, this separation from the way that things have been done, the experiences that Black women have had, the way that we relate to one another, as we start to change that, we tell a new narrative about what it feels like to be a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, there is some unfortunate aspect, but ultimately, by severing our ties with abuse, we make
Mm-hmm.
space for new levels of self-love, of social justice,
Mm-hmm.
and I think of dignity and respect for ourselves that we give ourselves and that others give us as well.
Yeah. So in addition to NADA, what are some other coping strategies that with the Black women clients you work with, that have been helpful to help them deal with their trauma history or trauma experiences?
So, NADA, journaling, I think community, again,
Mm-hmm.
the support group, the Raised by Narcissists forum on Reddit is a great place, I think, for women, for adult children of narcissists to go and just be a part of that, to observe the
Tell me what that is again.
conversations. It's Raised by Narcissists. That is a forum on Reddit, and there are so many members. I I'm wanting to say it's over 100,000 members, but I think it's even higher.
What?
It's so many. There's so many people. I think it's higher than that. It might be like 600,000.
Oh my goodness.
There are so many people in there discussing narcissistic parenting, and it really helps you identify as a victim, which is necessary for becoming a survivor. In order
Mm-hmm.
to have that transformation, you first have to say, "Dang, I experienced this. I'm a victim of
Mm-hmm.
this sort of abuse," and
Mm-hmm.
from there.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So as we're winding down, Dani, can you tell more about the virtual acupuncture sessions, how Black women can get in contact with you, and just any other information that will be helpful for Black women to consider?
Definitely. So again, the Not a Detox Toolkit is a free resource. I recommend downloading that. It has everything that you would need to consider. It's everything you need to go from zero to using Nada at home with ear seeds on your own if you choose. If you're someone who wants live support, placing the ear seeds, as well as that community with other Black women, you can visit ellisoninc.com/nada and sign up for a group session. And I would say, again, come there if you just want the help for placing the seeds and you don't want to talk about a thing. But if you want to engage or maybe be a fly on the wall while other women discuss their trauma, you're welcome to be there.
Okay. And how long are the sessions? Like, is it like a series of sessions? Is it an ongoing experience?
So I have one every week right now. And so that is just open as a support. Placing the seeds we can do within the first 30 minutes of the session. And if you want to peace out at that point, that's fine. But then that I leave about 30 to 60 minutes for women who want to talk or who are maybe having some benefits or some sort of a symptom as they're using NADA and they want to talk about that. So just, an office hour for whatever comes up.
Okay. And who are, let's say, the ideal candidates for this? And then who which Black women maybe are not appropriate candidates for these type of sessions?
Thank you so much for asking that question. So Black women who have strong positive associations with being Black, I think it helps because this is identity work. And so if that layer of your identity is shaky, there might be other work that needs to be done first. So you're comfortable in your own skin. You love being Black. Also, you have some faith, some relationship with God, with the universe that serves you, whatever that may mean. But you know it for yourself. You're secure in your faith. And also women who are genuinely ready for a change. Women who are open to embracing radical change for the better. Because once we pull one string, it has a trickle effect. Everything will unravel and you will get better, but you will have to go through a series of challenges to get there. And by the time you get finished healing your life, yourself will be entirely different. Yeah, so women who are open to, who are basically willing to trade in the life that they're currently living, going through the motions and not being genuinely present for a brand new life where they wake up every day excited for what's coming next.
Okay. So the Black women who are not good candidates are the opposite of what you just told me.
Yes. So I would say if you are like a churchgoer, healing trauma may not be aligned ultimately with the mindset that comes along with that, because we have to embrace a lot of inner darkness. And at least in my experience, the church culture doesn't even want to acknowledge a clinical need to treat something like trauma. It doesn't really teach us language or capacity for embracing our own brokenness. It more teaches us to kind of block it out and to stop short of acknowledging it, to feel shame or to feel like we're not being grateful by acknowledging the negative reality of our situation. So someone who is deeply connected to religion might not explore this option. But I would say that the great thing is NADA can work for anybody. If you're willing to place the ear seeds or get the treatment, you can experience those benefits. And if you choose to pursue it, then you'll continue to reap those benefits.
Okay. And is there any type of consultation process? Like, so Black women who reach out to you, what's the process? So they're going to contact you. I have your information description section. So they'll contact you. So can you walk us through what generally happens once they make that initial contact with you?
Yes. So once they sign up for a session, they'll get an initial welcome email. They get some options for different ear seeds to consider. And all you really need to do is bring your ear seeds to your virtual session. As far as considerations like medical considerations, NADA is really safe. It's natural, it's holistic, so it's appropriate for women who are pregnant. It's appropriate for those who might have bleeding disorders. Maybe it's good to know, especially it's more important if you're treating with needles in person. To just sort of be aware of things like clotting issues, dizziness, nausea. But with the ear seeds, they're so mild that it's really, you really have nothing to lose as far as giving it a try.
So it's not recommended that you get like a physical or medical clearance or anything before?
If you're interested in a diagnosis, if you want to know certainly whether or not you have PTSD or any number of other things, then you need a medical professional to diagnose you. If you don't need any sort of a prescription or diagnosis to seek acupuncture treatment. Now, an important distinction to make: full body acupuncture is done by an acupuncturist. That is a medical professional. The NADA protocol can be administered by acupuncture detox specialists, sometimes called acu-detox specialists, and they are certified just to administer that protocol. And so that's a treatment just for the addiction and for the PTSD. That's it.
Okay.
And so you're able to seek that treatment if you're interested in it. You don't need a prescription. You don't need to qualify. You can just walk in and get it.
Okay. Okay. So as we're winding down, Dani, are there any maybe anything you would like to share with Black women who might be on the fence about this?
I would say if you're on the fence, it's probably best to stay on the fence, because ambivalence is not your friend within this journey. It really isn't. It's much better if you are feeling some sort of a spark on the inside that says, yes, this is for me. This is something that I want to try. These are symptoms I'm experiencing. I absolutely want relief. And if I can get it through this natural treatment, then I'm willing to try it. That's for healing the PTSD, for addressing the trauma, for going no contact. It's important that you have a strong connection to your desire to move forward. And if anything that you're hearing is like, oh no, that's too overwhelming, I'm not interested in all of my repressed memories, I don't want to uncover all of this trauma, I don't want to uproot my life and go through a drastic change, because that can be traumatic, that big transformation. And I think it's okay to just respect that is where you are, and keep an eye on it. Maybe down the line it might be time. Don't force yourself to do something you're not ready for.
I think that's really important to really emphasize that, we're sharing information with you for you to consider. Dani's information will be in the description section, right? But just like with anything, it has to sit well with you in terms of that's something that you want to move forward with. So you can contact Dani, talk to her, express to her what you're looking for, and to see if it's aligned with what you're looking for. But again, Dani's information is in the description section of this video. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so. Give this video a thumbs up and share this video with other Black women. So I look forward to seeing you all later. So thank you so much for tuning in. Dan, if you could just stay on for one moment.